welcome to the deep dive.
Oh.
And today we're really going deep into the world of research methodology,
Oh, fun.
specifically a method called grounded theory.
Hmm.
You want to understand this approach better and see how it uses existing research. And so we're going to be diving into an academic article
Okay.
by Robert Thornberg titled Informed Grounded Theory. So get ready for a journey through inductive versus abductive
I
reasoning,
love a good journey.
the role of literature and research, and how to stay truly grounded in your findings.
All right, let's do it.
So grounded theory, can you maybe just give us a quick, just high-level explanation of what that is?
Yeah, grounded theory, or GT, it's all about discovering theory from data.
Okay.
So, GT arose as kind of a reaction against this idea of grand theories that were very popular back in like the 1960s in research.
Oh,
And it's really all about building theories from the ground up, rooted in those real-world observations.
okay. I like that. So like building it up from scratch
Yeah.
instead of starting with the theory.
Ex-
Okay, cool. So I know that in classic GT, it's suggested to avoid related literature until after analysis.
Yes.
I don't know why anyone would want to do that. It's like
Yeah.
going into a research project blindfolded.
Right. Well, the idea is to avoid contamination. And by that, I mean, not letting prior ideas and theories influence your interpretation of the data.
Okay, so like letting it be pure,
Yes.
letting the findings speak for themselves.
Exactly.
Okay. But I know Thornberg raises some problems with this classic approach.
He does.
Can you maybe walk us through some of those concerns that he brings up?
Sure. So one of the first things Thornberg points out is that it ignores the researcher's existing expertise.
Oh, right.
So you're going into this project and having to pretend to be a theoretical virgin,
Oh, wow.
which is, not very realistic for a lot of researchers.
Right, because most researchers have some sort of background in this area,
Exactly.
especially if they're choosing this to be their research topic.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else?
Well, another concern is that it can actually be used to justify poor research.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so, imagine someone saying, oh, I didn't know that was already discovered because I wasn't supposed to read about it.
Yeah, like as an excuse.
Exactly.
Okay, so what else?
Also, just practically speaking, it's often impossible.
Ah,
So, if you're applying for grants or going through ethics reviews, you often have to show you understand the existing research.
yeah, for sure. And also, wouldn't researchers be missing out on standing on the shoulders of giants, so to speak?
Exactly. Why not use the knowledge that's already out there?
Yeah.
And there are researchers out there that have even found that engaging with the literature actually enhances their analysis.
Oh, wow.
And allows them to see nuances in their data they might have missed otherwise.
So it broadens their perspective
Yes.
instead of limiting it.
Right.
That's interesting. So that
Mhm.
kind of leads to this idea that, we can never really be a truly blank slate.
Right.
Like Thornberg says, seeing is a theory-laden undertaking.
Yes, and that's such a key point.
Yeah.
We all bring our own background and experiences to the research,
Sure.
and that shapes what we see and how we interpret it.
Yeah, like our lens that we're looking through has already been shaped by our experiences.
Exactly.
So if pure induction isn't realistic, what's a better option?
Well, Thornberg proposes a process called abduction,
Okay.
and this recognizes the interplay between data and existing knowledge.
Oh.
It's almost like a detective using clues and their knowledge of crime to solve a case.
Okay, so using that existing knowledge to make sense of what they're seeing.
Exactly. They're going back and forth between the evidence and their understanding to find the best possible explanation.
Okay, so it's a little more dynamic. I like that.
It is.
So, what is constructivist grounded theory?
So that's actually one of the examples that Thornberg talks about.
Oh, okay.
And, in this approach, it recognizes that knowledge isn't just out there waiting to be discovered.
Ooh.
It's more about the idea that both the data and theories are co-created by the researcher.
Okay, so it's not completely objective.
There's some subjectivity in there.
Exactly. Our perspectives are inherently part of the process.
Okay. So then in that case, that would mean that our perspectives are actually valuable tools
Yes.
for understanding the data.
And Thornberg calls this informed grounded theory. So it's all about encouraging researchers to use existing literature critically and creatively.
Okay, so it's not like you're letting it dictate everything, but you're letting it inform
Exactly.
your research.
You said it perfectly.
Okay, and does Thornberg offer any guidance for researchers
He does.
who are trying to take on this informed grounded theory?
Yeah, he outlines a set of what he calls data sensitizing principles
Okay.
to help researchers engage with the existing literature effectively.
Okay, data sensitizing principles. I like that.
Yeah.
What are some of the key ideas that he highlights?
Well, first he emphasizes theoretical agnosticism.
Okay.
And this basically means that researchers shouldn't get too attached to any one theory.
Okay.
They should stay open to different perspectives as they're analyzing their data. Yeah. Like not being married to one idea.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's all about maintaining a critical and open mind throughout that research process.
Yeah, like not letting your bias completely cloud your judgment.
Right.
Okay, I like that. What else?
He also highlights the importance of theoretical pluralism.
Right.
So this encourages researchers to consider a range of different viewpoints.
Okay.
So that they're not getting stuck in just one way of thinking.
So kind of like having different experts weigh in almost.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Okay.
It helps you consider alternative explanations and avoid that tunnel vision.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
What other principles does he recommend?
Well, one that's particularly helpful, especially for new researchers, is the theoretical sampling of literature.
Okay.
This encourages researchers to be strategic about what they read.
Good.
Instead of trying to read everything on a given topic, they should focus on what's directly relevant to the codes and concepts that are emerging in their research.
Yeah, that would save so much time.
Yeah, it can definitely help with information overload.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, and even with all of this literature, you should still stay grounded in the data.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
That's a key principle to remember, because at the end of the day, the data is still king in grounded theory.
Yeah, it's informing but not dictating.
Right. The literature informs, but it doesn't dictate.
Okay.
Researchers should be constantly checking their interpretations against their observations.
Okay.
Making sure they're not forcing the data to fit a pre-existing theory.
I like that. Finding that sweet spot.
Exactly.
Okay.
And along with staying grounded, Thornberg also encourages researchers to embrace theoretical playfulness.
Theoretical playfulness.
Yes.
That sounds fun.
It can be.
What is that?
It's all about encouraging researchers to be creative, to make new connections, and even challenge existing ideas.
Oh.
So approaching their research with that sense of curiosity and wonder and being open to unexpected discoveries.
So not just being like super rigid and systematic.
Right. But
Right.
also having fun with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay, what's the next principle?
Another important one is memoing extant knowledge associations.
Extant knowledge associations.
Yes.
What is that?
So this is all about documenting the connections that researchers are making between the literature and their data.
Okay.
So, it helps them to track their thinking process
Oh,
and to
yeah.
really see how the literature is influencing their analysis.
It's kind of like journaling almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
It creates a clear audit trail of how the research is developing.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What's the last principle?
Okay, so last but not least, we have constant reflexivity.
Okay.
And this is so important, especially when we're talking about incorporating existing knowledge into research.
Yeah.
It's a reminder for researchers to be aware of their own biases and how they might be influencing their interpretation of the data.
Oh, for sure.
Acknowledging that we all come to the research with our own perspectives and assumptions.
Absolutely.
And we have to be mindful of how those might be shaping our understanding.
So being self-aware.
Yes, and critically reflective throughout the entire process.
Okay, cool. I really like all these data sensitizing principles.
Yeah, they're very helpful.
Okay, well, we've covered a lot here in part 1.
We have.
Let's take a short break and we'll come back in part 2 to talk a little bit more about these principles and how we can apply them in different contexts.
Sounds good. As we've been talking about informed grounded theory, I'm realizing this approach has a lot in common with the way we learn in everyday life.
Oh, really?
How so? Well, think about it. When we approach new experiences, we don't come at them as completely blank slates.
Right.
We're drawing on our past experiences,
Yeah.
the things we've read, conversations we've had. All of that kind of informs our understanding.
Yeah, so we're always building on what we already know.
Exactly. And just like in Informed GT, we're not letting that existing knowledge dictate, our perceptions, but we are using it to help us make sense of what we're experiencing.
So it's like formalizing a process that we're already kind of doing.
I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
It's really about being mindful of how that existing knowledge is shaping our understanding.
Right.
And then using that awareness to guide our learning, whether it's research or just navigating our daily lives.
That makes it a lot more relatable
Yeah,
and applicable, I feel like, to everyday life.
absolutely.
So what kind of impact do you think this approach could have in other fields?
I think it holds huge potential for fields like education.
Okay.
Educators, they're constantly encountering new situations in their classrooms,
Yeah.
and they need to be making decisions based on, their professional knowledge and their observations of their students.
They're like mini GT researchers every day.
Yeah, in a way they are. They observe, reflect, adjust their approaches based on what they're learning.
Yeah.
And so, informed GT could provide them with a more structured framework for that process.
Oh, that's interesting. So why do you think, if this is so valuable, why isn't it more widely embraced?
That's a good question. Thornberg points out that classic GT emphasis on avoiding the literature,
Right.
it still persists.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I think part of it might be the legacy of positivism in research.
Oh,
This idea that objectivity is the gold standard.
okay.
That we can somehow separate ourselves from our knowledge and experiences.
I like that contamination worry.
Exactly. That fear that existing knowledge will taint the purity of our observations.
Yeah.
But, as we've been discussing, I think that perspective is evolving.
Yeah.
More and more researchers are recognizing that our perspectives, our lenses are actually valuable assets.
They're what helps us connect with the data,
Exactly.
make meaning of it.
You got it.
Okay.
Yep.
And what else do you think?
I also think that another reason why informed GT might face resistance is that it requires a certain level of intellectual humility.
Humility. How so?
Well, it asks us to acknowledge that we don't have all the answers,
Yeah.
that our existing knowledge is constantly evolving, and that we need to be open to new perspectives and interpretations.
So we're works in progress.
Exactly. We're always learning and refining our understanding.
Yeah. That's kind of a beautiful thing.
It is. It keeps learning dynamic and engaging.
Right. And it's kind of what drew us to this show in the first place,
Absolutely.
the deep dive.
So true.
Okay, so let's dive back into these data sensitizing principles a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think it's worth spending some time, seeing how they can guide us, not just in research, but also in everyday life.
I agree. They offer some really valuable insights that we can apply in all sorts of contexts.
Yeah, for sure. So let's start with theoretical agnosticism.
Okay.
How do you think we can apply that principle outside of academia?
I think it's really about approaching new situations with an open mind,
Okay.
and not holding too tightly to our pre-existing beliefs or assumptions.
This is like not going into a conversation expecting a certain outcome.
Right, exactly. Letting go of that need to be right.
Yeah.
And really embracing the opportunity to learn something new, even if it challenges what we currently believe.
Yeah, that's how we grow.
It is. And it can also help us be more empathetic and understanding of others, even when their views are different from our own.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so how about theoretical pluralism?
Okay.
How does that translate to our daily lives?
It encourages us to actively seek out diverse perspectives
No.
and to consider multiple viewpoints before forming our own opinions.
Okay, so being well-rounded.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So instead of just getting our news from a single source or surrounding ourselves with people who already agree with us,
Right.
we're deliberately exposing ourselves to different ideas and ways of thinking.
Yeah, broadening our horizons.
Exactly. And it's especially important when we're facing complex issues or making big decisions.
Yeah.
Considering multiple perspectives helps us develop a more comprehensive understanding
Right.
and ultimately make more informed choices.
Okay, so theoretical sampling of literature. This one seems a little bit more,
Research specific.
yeah, research specific.
Yeah.
How can we apply that one in a broader sense?
I think it's about being mindful and intentional about the information we're consuming.
Okay.
So instead of just passively absorbing everything that comes our way,
Yeah.
we should actively seek out information that's relevant to our goals, our interests, and the decisions that we're facing.
So being picky almost.
In a way, yes. We're curating our own personal libraries of knowledge,
I like that.
tailoring them to our specific needs and interests.
Yeah, for sure.
It really helps us manage that information overload and focus on what truly matters.
Okay, so staying grounded. How is that relevant to today's world?
Oh, it's more important now than ever.
Yeah.
It reminds us to check our assumptions against reality,
Okay.
to be open to evidence that might challenge our beliefs, and to be willing to adjust our perspectives as we learn more.
So not getting lost in our own little echo chambers.
Right, exactly. It's about cultivating curiosity and critical thinking, constantly questioning what we think we know and being open to new information.
I like that. So learning is a lifelong journey. We're constantly evolving.
We are.
Okay, theoretical playfulness.
Yes, this is a fun one.
This one is fun. How can we incorporate this one into our lives?
I think it's about approaching life with a sense of wonder and curiosity.
Okay.
Being willing to experiment and try new things and not being afraid to challenge those conventional ways of thinking.
Oh.
So it's about bringing creativity and imagination to problem solving.
I like that.
Seeing the world as this playground for exploration and discovery.
Yes, bringing out that inner child.
Exactly. I think that approach can lead to a much more joyful and fulfilling life,
Yeah.
full of unexpected adventures and creative breakthroughs.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so how about memoing extant knowledge associations?
Okay.
Is there a way to apply that outside of like a research setting?
I believe there is. I think it's about paying attention to the connections that we're making
Okay.
between what we're learning and our own experiences.
Those
And
two.
then, we can reflect on these connections through journaling conversations with others or even just quiet contemplation.
So making it our own.
Exactly. We're actively integrating that new knowledge into our existing understanding and making it truly our own.
Okay,
It
awesome.
helps us deepen our understanding and really make those meaningful connections between our intellectual lives
Right.
and our lived experiences.
Okay, and the last one, constant reflexivity.
Yes, this is crucial.
This seems very relevant to what's happening in the world today.
It really is. It's all about cultivating an awareness of our own biases and privileges
Yeah.
and how those might be influencing our perceptions and our interactions.
So making sure that we're seeing the full picture.
Exactly. And that we're approaching situations with fairness and open-mindedness.
Right.
And it's a continuous practice. It requires humility, courage, and a willingness to learn and evolve.
This has been such a good conversation.
It has.
It's so enlightening.
I've enjoyed it.
I really feel like we've not only delved into informed, grounded theory, but also just uncovered really valuable principles for living a more thoughtful and engaged life.
Absolutely. I think the beauty of this approach is that it encourages us to be both informed by existing knowledge and grounded in our own experiences.
Right.
And I think that combination is really powerful for navigating all the complexities of the world.
Okay, well, we've covered a lot of ground here in part two.
We have.
In our final segment, we'll explore how informed, grounded theory might address those conflicting viewpoints
Okay.
in research, and also how this approach can benefit individuals who aren't necessarily engaged in like formal research.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. As we wrap up this exploration of informed, grounded theory, I'm really struck by how this method helps us move beyond just like absorbing information and become active creators of new knowledge.
It really is exciting.
Yeah.
The shift from being passive recipients of information to really actively shaping understanding and contributing our own unique perspectives and experiences to that ongoing conversation of ideas.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about, engaging with existing research critically and creatively. But how does informed, grounded theory handle situations where there are like conflicting viewpoints or even gaps in the research?
Well, that's where I think those data sensitizing principles really come in handy.
Okay.
Remember theoretical agnosticism.
Yes.
It reminds us to not treat any single perspective as like the ultimate truth.
Right.
Right? We should be approaching the literature with a critical eye, looking for those areas of agreement, disagreement, and where further research is needed.
So it's almost like piecing together a puzzle, but recognizing that some pieces might be missing or don't quite fit.
Yeah, I love that analogy. That's great.
Yeah.
And, often it's those gaps and inconsistencies where the most exciting discoveries are made. Those are the things that present the opportunities to really push the boundaries of knowledge and contribute something new.
So instead of being intimidated by that, we can kind of see that as an invitation
Exactly.
to contribute.
Informed grounded theory gives us those tools and that mindset to do just that.
Yeah. Okay, so before we wrap up, I want to get your perspective on how this approach can benefit people who aren't necessarily like involved in formal research.
I think the principles of informed grounded theory can be applied to any area of life where learning growth and, informed decision-making are important.
So not just for academics.
Right. It's something that can benefit anyone who wants to be a more engaged and informed individual
Okay.
because we're constantly, facing new information and new challenges in our lives.
Yeah.
So whether we're making decisions about our health, our finances, how we engage in our communities, all of the principles of informed grounded theory can really guide us.
So we're all researchers in our own right.
Exactly, we are. We're gathering data, interpreting it, and making choices based on what we learn.
Yeah. And if somebody wanted to start applying these principles in their own life, where would they start?
Well, I think it starts with cultivating curiosity and a willingness to challenge assumptions. So, when you encounter new information, instead of just accepting it at face value or just dismissing it outright,
Yeah.
ask yourself, what are the sources? What are the different perspectives on this? How does this fit with what I already know?
So it's like turning everyday experiences into learning opportunities.
Exactly. And the more we do that, the more we start to see the world through that lens of informed grounded theory,
Yeah.
recognizing that, knowledge and experience are really interconnected and that we have a role in shaping our own understanding.
Okay, one last question.
Sure.
We've explored how this approach can help us become more effective learners and decision makers. But what role do you think intuition and gut feelings play in this process?
That's a great question. And, informed grounded theory really emphasizes critical thinking and a systematic approach to gathering knowledge.
Yeah.
I do think there's room for intuition, that sense of knowing that sometimes goes beyond logic and data.
So it's not about ignoring it, but recognizing that it can work together with a more structured approach.
Yeah, exactly. It's about finding that balance between head and heart, logic and intuition, and recognizing that the richest understanding often comes from that interplay.
I love that. Well, this has been such a great deep dive into informed grounded theory.
It has.
We've not only, uncovered this fascinating research method, but we've also just gained, I think, a lot of valuable insight into the nature of learning and the power of bringing our whole selves to that process.
I couldn't agree more. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you to all of our listeners for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious and open to all those endless possibilities of learning and discovery.